You're listening to Catholic Chicago. Ahead, the Archdiocese of Chicago brings you programs about the people, events, and issues that touch our lives. Welcome to Catholic Chicago.
Asking me lovingly to come and follow you. Here I am. Did I hear you call?
Good morning. This is Sister Lovina Francis Pamet. I'm a Franciscan Sister of the Sacred Heart in the Archdiocese of Chicago. Welcome to Dare to Love show. Dare to Love is a show that promotes vocations and vocation ministry to support those who are enthusiastic and passionate about the different forms of life in the church. I also represent the Chicago Archdiocesan Vocation Association, who is the leg and arm of vocation ministry in collaboration with the Vocation Office with Father Tim Monahan as the vocation director. I would like to share with you a very special interview with, her name is Liz Hughes, who's the executive director of the Franciscan Mission Service, in short, FMS. And she has a lot of information, and I was able to interview her through Zoom, which we recorded. And thanks to Brian Brock and his technical magic, and with me as well in the studio is Clint Cottrell, part of the radio TV. They're going to show this interview. So here is Liz Hughes of Franciscan Mission Service.
Today, Franciscan Mission Service, at our heart, is a mission organization in the Franciscan tradition. We were founded some 34 years ago by Brother Anselm Moons. Brother Moons came from the Netherlands to the United States, initially envisioning that he would be forming friars for overseas mission. But he eventually came to the discernment that his call was actually to form the laity. And so Franciscan Mission Service was born. If I had to encapsulate the spirit of who we are in one sentence, I would say, inspired by the examples of St. Francis and St. Clare, Franciscan Mission Service shares and receives God's unconditional love across borders through a way of life that centers marginalized voices and focuses on living out the gospel encounter of intercultural encounters, radical inclusion, authentic humility, and transformative justice. So how do we do that? We have 6 distinct programs that allow us to strive towards this mission. One, of course, is the Overseas Lay Mission Program. Individuals serve for 2 or more years overseas, walking with local communities, embracing a Franciscan ministry of presence. And while they're doing that, they're teachers, working in orphanages, working in prisons, working in other social service organizations. Over the years, FMS lay missioners have served in some 20 countries throughout the globe. Currently, they are serving in Bolivia, in Jamaica, and along the US-Mexico border. We go at the invitation of local communities, particularly local sisters and friars from the Franciscan Charism. Our second program is our DC Service Corps Volunteer Program, specifically for young adults who wish to serve for 11 months in Washington, D.C. We recognized that the need isn't just overseas, it's also a need for a ministry of presence and what Pope Francis would say is a culture of encounter right here in our own backyard of Washington, D.C. The individuals who are serving receive a deep formation, just as the overseas lay missioners do. And then they augment the capacity of local nonprofits. And we strive to develop them as leaders, as servant leaders in the Franciscan tradition. Our third program is brand new this year. It is our Franciscan Fellows program. Those individuals have a heart for Franciscanism and a heart for mission. They might not have a reality of life that allows them to go overseas at this time. So they gather as a cohort in community once a month at our FMS Casa, our volunteer house and house of hospitality, for fellowship, a workshop on Franciscanism and mission, and a chance to be together. They'll join us for events throughout the year, such as going to transit service together, going to our commissioning mass together, and they just had their opening retreat last weekend. Our fourth program is we offer a handful of mission trips each year, traditionally geared towards university students, inviting them to come for a week immersion experience in Washington, D.C. It's a combination of direct service, prayer, and education, a learning and a being with, again, steeped in this ministry of presence. Our fifth piece is our social media ministry. We know that so many have a heart for mission and only a fraction can actually go on mission. So we share the stories of mission through regular blogs and other social media outreach. And then finally, here in Washington, D.C., the volunteer house serves as a house of hospitality. Friends of the organization can come stay for a short term in the house of hospitality. So it is a broader Franciscan community.
That is wonderful. Wow. Actually, I'm learning a lot about this, more than what I listened to. What interested me is the personal kind of witness and you know, your own story too, because I'm wondering, well, how did you get involved? You know, how do people get involved? Because I know I just wanted to say that having been a lay missionary with the Redemptorists, I think that was a major part of why I'm a sister now. It's because of their witness and the service, because something within me was restless. And having been part of a mission team, that really kind of like led me onwards into this journey. And then finally, I didn't have to become a sister, but it did lead me to this vocation. What about you, Liz?
Oh, that's beautiful. I can relate to that. Something restlessness. The image that often comes in my own prayer life is an image of walking into a dark room and looking for the overhead light, just wishing I could know what God's call for me is and see it, the light with complete clarity. And I've realized that for me, that overhead light switch doesn't exist, but rather it's a nightlight. And that nightlight, God gives me just enough light for what I need at the moment. And then I have to trust that God will reveal the next nightlight and the next one and the next one. And at the end of my life, this room of shimmering, mismatched, surprising nightlights offers more light and goodness than anything I could have ever imagined had I actually found that overhead light switch that I too often seek. So with that said, my own vocational path is winding. I started living my faith in a more active way, prioritizing justice at Boston College as an undergraduate. Upon graduating from BC, I engaged in postgraduate service myself through Notre Dame's Alliance for Catholic Education, where I served as a fourth grade teacher in Birmingham, Alabama for 2 years. And then after that time, I was discerning, it wasn't that deep at that point in my life, but I knew I wanted to do something for the common good. So I went to work for the federal government for 12 years and really had beautiful experience of learning about servant leadership. Had some wonderful, particularly female bosses who lived servant leadership by their witness. 2 of those years I was in Mexico City working in the embassy, and I felt that same restlessness, Sister Lovina, that you spoke to. So by God's grace, I got a leave of absence from the government and volunteered for 3 months in Honduras, teaching in a rural Catholic school in Honduras. And I think that planted the seeds for my serious looking of what am I being called to? What is the tug towards my next career step? A couple of years later, there was a vacancy with the Jesuit Volunteer Corps directing their international program at the time. And I applied, knowing I didn't have the perfect resume for the position, knowing that it might be a leap of faith on both ends. And it was a beautiful leap of faith. I directed the international program at JVC for 3 years and loved it. Around that time, there became an opportunity with FMS, which was in the same building, to become executive director. So I applied. It was a prayerful, discerning process. And I was so honored to be able to join this organization to lead at the next level as executive director, and also to deepen my own faith by embracing and learning about the Franciscan charism. And it really has deepened my relationship with God. I've been here for 6.5 years, and this Franciscan charism has become part of me. It is very special and is part of my path to God now.
I had no idea. So ACE fellowship, when you mentioned ACE, it's like, I just love the fact that all these educators come together, be on mission somewhere else, out of their comfort zone, because community living is not for, for people who like to live complacently or in comfort. I mean, when you marry, you get to know your spouse, and then you have a family, you build your own culture. So that is a very important kind of like vocation being lived out. Being single, whether you're living alone, in terms of your preferences, the way you live, is also one way of being in the church and being of service. And then you have your own community at work, maybe, or an intentional community. And then you have a community of people from different families, different backgrounds, maybe different cultures, I don't know.
Yeah.
Probably in a different setting, in a town where it's a different culture. And you must have lived that with ACE, right?
Yes, I absolutely lived it. The school where I was teaching was an nearly all Black school. Adjacent, it was the cathedral school for the city. So adjacent to a parish that had nearly all white parishioners, and literally adjacent. This was a long time ago. This was in 2000 through 2002. And sadly, in 2002, the cathedral school for the city closed. And there were a lot of tensions and a lot of struggles then and now. And it's not limited to Alabama, of course. It's everywhere.
But that's also, I think, being out in mission, even locally, as you're saying. It doesn't have to be like, 1,000 miles away in another country. Within our own neighborhoods,
right?
Even our own backyard might as well be 1,000 miles away. In terms of the difference in culture, like the polarities we go through. That's part of being missioned, is being sent out. Yeah. Because at the end of every Mass, we are sent out to go forth and live our lives for the glory of God, in service and following Jesus. I think it's also very interesting that you worked for the Jesuits mission service.
Jesuit Volunteer Corps.
Volunteer service, so JVC. And you worked for them for 3 years. And then you went into FMS, which is Franciscan. How did you feel about that, and how do you feel about that now? Because FMS, the Franciscan Mission Service, is different. What makes them different?
Yeah, it is different. And I was formed as a young adult in the Ignatian tradition, from my college, university years, to making the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius in my 20s, to working for JVC. That was a foundation. And Franciscanism has deepened my faith. The idea of standing at the foot of the cross with Jesus and imagining an Ignatian prayer like the Examen, through the lens of standing at the foot of the cross with Jesus and marginalized individuals and communities, was a concept that was introduced to me through the Franciscans that I know. And that is such a deep prayer practice for me. Another piece of Franciscanism that I love is the incarnation and the reality that God sent his son from a place of love and joy and goodness. I had the opportunity to go with the Franciscan pilgrimage program to Assisi and to Greccio, and that idea and the emphasis on the love and joy and goodness has been so instrumental to me. Of course, salvation is part of our Catholic faith, yes. And that Franciscan emphasis on goodness and love and joy is something that is the starting point for me in my faith. I also love the fraternity, the radical inclusiveness that Franciscanism offers, being able to work with so many women religious who model the witness of welcoming so many to the table so beautifully, has been a new experience for me with Franciscan mission service. And of course, the friars do that as well. That fraternity and radical inclusivity of welcoming everybody to the table has been really special.
So tell me more in terms of that ministry of presence. And also, I think you have a story, perhaps, on like how this is impacting young people and their own vocation? Because you talked about your vocation, which I think is beautiful. And so, yeah, please.
Yes, there's so many beautiful stories about the ministry of presence. Let me share one with you briefly. Hannah is a missioner who served in Kingston, Jamaica. One of her ministry sites is a home for boys born HIV positive. There, she met a boy named Peter. Peter lives very simply, has few possessions. On Mother's Day last year, Hannah and her fellow missioner walked with Peter and other boys from the home to the cathedral across the street for Mass, as they did every Sunday. When it was time to bless the mothers at the end of Mass, Hannah leaned over to Peter and asked his mother's name so she could pray for her. Peter was silent for a while before saying, "I don't know. I don't remember." After a pause, Peter said, "I'm going to pray for you. You, Hannah, are like my mother." After Mass each Sunday, Hannah then took Peter and his housemates to another children's home. In this home, the children experienced profound disabilities. Hannah explained to Peter how these children cannot feed themselves, that their brains, arms, and legs don't work the same way as Peter's. Without hesitation, Peter found a hungry child, scooped him up, gave him a big hug, and started bottle feeding him. For over 2 hours, Peter was focused on loving these children. Peter, who experienced being marginalized and oppressed himself, cherished the opportunity to accompany these kids, and they loved him in return. So this is what we are about, being with Jesus by loving and accompanying others. And we see and we witness the awe of Jesus' presence through moments like this. This is the ministry of presence.
That is so well said, and that's such a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that, Liz.
Oh, thank you.
So thank you, Liz Hughes, again for that wonderful information on the Franciscan Mission Service. Up next, we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to go into a tribute for Father Mike Scherschel, who died on August 10. And with us will be Brother John Eustice and Father Adam MacDonald.
All the difference in the lives of adolescents. Catholic Charities understands this, and our mentorship programs provide a free opportunity for young adults to spend time with volunteers who genuinely care about them. This program is ideal for youth aged 9 through 12 who may need support navigating the challenges of childhood and early adolescence. Our amazing volunteers serve as friends who help youth recognize their strengths and empower them to reach their full potential. Catholic Charities conducts a thorough background check on every volunteer, and our program coordinator closely monitors and supports every relationship. Mentoring is a fun after-school program that can help young adults build confidence and enjoy fun activities with their peers, too. To learn more, visit CatholicCharities.net or call 312-655-7970 in Cook County and 847-782-4224 in Lake County. We're connecting youth with great role models. Join us today.
Franciscan Mission Service is an independent nonprofit that supports Catholics who accompany marginalized communities in Washington, D.C. through our year-long D.C. Service Corps program or abroad through our Overseas Lay Mission program. With a Franciscan posture of humility, our missioners enter as guests in another community as they seek to know and learn from those they serve alongside. Missioners cultivate authentic, cross-cultural relationships based on mutuality and compassionate presence. Our missioners share God's love through supporting locally run ministries as they live in intentional Christian communities rooted in simplicity, reflection, and solidarity. At FMS, mission is striving to see the world from the perspective of those on the margins. and allowing their perspectives to change our own beliefs, practices, and mindsets. Are you ready to join us in this way of life?
What tomorrow brings. Give me the grace to love and to be faithful, to be more like you. Here I am. Did I hear you call my name?
And we are back. Again, this is Sister Lovina Pamet. I am the host for Dare to Love show. And so we just had Liz Hughes from Franciscan Mission Service, or FMS in short. And their website is franciscanmissionservice.org. franciscanmissionservice.org. And now I would like to introduce our guests who are joining us today, Brother John Eustice and Father Adam MacDonald. Welcome, Brother John and Father Adam. Thank you for joining me. So I have brought in Brother John and Father Adam because we would like to give tribute to our dear friend and colleague, Father Mike Scherschel, who died on August 10 this year. And he was the pastor for St. Hubert's and St. Matthew's as part of that Renew My Church. And we really love him as a friend and colleague. And the title of the show is Ministry of Presence, a Gift of Love. And I would have to say Father Mike really encapsulated that for us. Also, I would have had two other people and other CAVA members with us, but representing those who are part of CAVA, the Chicago Archdiocesan Vocation Association, I was able to get a video clip from another. So Father Mike Scherschel, by the way, I haven't mentioned it, had been serving as the part of the CAVA Advisory Board in Vocation Ministry. And so one other part of the board is Brother John currently, and also Sister Michele Fisher, from the Sisters of the Holy Family of Nazareth. And Brian is going to play the 1-minute video clip, and then as we come back, then Brother John and Father Adam will also share their own thoughts.
Hi, I'm Sister Michele Fisher, Sister of the Holy Family of Nazareth from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I met Father Mike in 2014 when I was living in Chicago and doing vocation ministry. It was a tremendous gift. This wonderful man was kind, compassionate, so interested in people, so supportive of everybody's vocation, not just those to the priesthood or consecrated life. He loved being a vocation minister, and later he loved being a pastor. He was generous, he was smart, he was quiet, but so supportive. He will be greatly missed. I know we have an advocate in heaven in Father Mike. We'll miss you, dear friend.
And so, Father Adam, there's been a history between you and Father Mike. So would you like to say a few words?
Yes, very much so. Thank you, Sister Lovina. Father Mike and I have probably known each other for the better part of the last 10 years through CAVA. And the one word that comes to mind when I think of Father Mike, even now, is the word humility. A value that I treasure myself, but one that I can emulate from his example. Just the most kind, gentle, humble person. And to echo Sister Michele's tribute is to say that Father Mike was someone who was so humble in his own vocation that he was so open to encouraging others to know and consider their own vocation, whatever that was, whether it was to religious life, to single life, or to holy matrimony. The picture you saw flashing on the screen of me and Father Mike together was from last summer when we had the chance to celebrate together the perpetual profession of vows of a mutual friend who was a member of the Alexian Brothers. And again, in that celebration, the humility of Father Mike coming forth in his words, and most importantly, through his lived witness. So thank you for the opportunity to share my recollections of Father Mike today.
Thank you. And Brother John, also having served in the on the board with Father Mike and also working on a project, would you like to say a few words as well?
Sure. Thank you for the invitation. Father Mike Scherschel, for me, was a person that everybody else has been saying, but a person of gentleness, a person of purpose, and a person who deeply cared for people responding to God's invitation. And he did it in quiet ways, but he also did it in loud sort of ways too, not through his own voice, but through his whole community. Serving with him on the board and trying to advocate for young people who have indicated that they're open to the idea of becoming a diocesan priest, a religious brother, religious sister, or a religious priest. He was actively involved in that and had a desire for that. But he also had the desire for his parishioners to get to know all the different options that were out there. Their feast day of St. Hubert's last year was just incredible. People from all walks of life there were together. And I think that just encapsulates who he is and his gentle spirit. And he's going to sorely be missed. But I think his vision for working together with archdiocesan priests and with people in consecrated life to promote the greater glory of God is going to live for a long time.
Thank you. Yes. So Sister Maria Brizuela, who had at some point also served on the board, but even before that, because for my community, the Franciscan Sisters Sacred Heart, I served as the vocation director. And then when I moved to LA for a few years, she then took over the director for vocation ministry in my community. And when she was new with CAVA and serving, she was introduced to Father Mike Scherschel, who was asking for a sister who's part of CAVA to work with him in giving presentations at parishes and also to young people, because he knew right away that he needed other people to collaborate with. And not just, like him giving the talk. He needed like something that is rounded and that it shows the collaboration among different people, lay people, sisters, brothers, religious priests, and diocesan priests. So in that way, his own quiet, loving leadership was felt. And Sister Maria and him, they got close really quickly. And through Father Mike also, CAVA and the membership, we were able to tap into that collaboration in terms of by vicariate. There, we used to have that kind of one-on-one partnership, and Mike made that happen. He was a true bridge. And then, of course, so he didn't quite finish the second term for board membership, but for CAVA board, you serve like 6 years, and then you can rest for 1 year, and then you can serve another 6 years. So during this time, he actually was serving on, I gave him 2 years, actually. I mean, poor thing. He was a pastor, right? But he didn't quite finish it. But as Sister Michele had indicated, he is now our best advocate in heaven. So we have like a minute. If you have any last words. So Father Adam, if you have any last words to kind of like tell people, especially those who have loved him and is mourning him.
Yes. I would say that Father Mike's legacy will probably be revealed to us over many years to come, the number of lives he touched. I remember now thinking about it, my first intersecting with him when he was working with seminarians that were entering St. Joseph College Seminary for the Archdiocese, and men that at the same time were looking at our Divine Word community here in the Chicago area, and what wonderful conversations we had about how we could best serve and guide and support these young men. So I know there are any number of men currently serving in or discerning with the Archdiocese whose journeys were particularly impacted and inspired by Father Mike and his tremendous example and encouragement. So I will remember him for that as well.
Yes, beautiful. Thank you, Father Adam. Brother John, any last words?
Yeah, just really quickly, just his attention to his parishioners, especially the two young women who are joining religious life, and his zeal for that. I think matches his zeal for celebrating the sacraments and celebrating the body of Christ for everybody who gathers around the altar. And just for me, what a great model as I'm studying towards priesthood. So I think he's a great model for the whole body of Christ, though.
And so, Father Mike, I know you're listening. We love you. We will miss you. And thank you all for joining us. And let us continue to pray for one another. May God give us peace. Amen.